Hello, Math 3 students. So today we're going to go over adding and subtracting rational expressions. So basically, rational expressions are expressions that are fractions. They have to be some sort of fractional form. So you kind of have to think back to how you add and subtract fractions, okay? So let me just give you kind of an easy example here. Let's say I gave you like 5 thirds plus 1/4. Okay. If I told you to do this in your head, right, without a calculator, you would need to get a common denominator, which means that you would need to get the bottom to be the same. Now you can make equivalent fractions by multiplying the top and the bottom by the same value. That's essentially by like multiplying by 1. So if I've got a 3 and a 4, you want to think of something called a least common multiple. So like what's the smallest number 3 and a 4 could both go into? That's going to be 12. So you want to make the bottom number 12. So in order to get this 3 to be a 12, I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 4. And I get 20 over 12. And then in order to get my 1/4 to be a 12 in the denominator, I'm going to multiply by 3 over 3, which would give me 3 over 12. And then when you add, you simply keep the denominator the same and add the numbers on top. All right, so that is how that works. Subtraction works the same too, and you're going to see the only thing that's kind of a little bit different with subtraction is you have to make sure that you distribute the negative to everything in the second fraction, but we'll get there. All right, so this problem here is going to be really similar to what we just did. Okay, the only difference is that it has variables in it. So if we look here, we've got a 4 and a 3. So what's the smallest number, least common multiple we can use to make out of, or least common multiple, I should say, between 4 and 3. Now, if you're confused as to what I mean by least common multiple, like multiples of 3 would be 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, and so on. Multiples of 4 would be 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and so on. Now, least common multiple just means you pick the smallest number that they have in common. All right, so again, this is going to be 12. You're going to multiply the top and the bottom here by 3 so that we get a 12 on, so we get a 12 on the bottom here. Now, in this case, we have an x on top, so we have to do x times 3. So we get 3x over 12, and then we're going to multiply this guy by 4 over 4, which is going to give us 32 over 12. All right, now before, we were simply able to combine the terms on the top because they were both constants, right? They didn't have any variables. But in this case, we now have our common denominator, so we know that our denominator is going to be 12. But what we want to do is we want to go ahead and combine these things on top, but we can't. They're not like terms. So you literally just end up with 3x plus 32, and that's your answer. So you get 3x plus 32 all over 12. All right. All right, let's try the next one here. So if we look here, right, this guy has an 8. This guy only has an x. This guy has an x, okay? So kind of the way I want you to kind of start thinking about this is like, what does one guy have that the other guy's missing, okay? So if I'm looking here, the second guy has an 8. The first guy does not have an 8. If I multiply this first guy by 8 over 8, I'm going to end up with an 8x on the bottom, which is going to be the exact same denominator as the second fraction there. So I end up with 8 over 8x, right? Because I do 8 times 1, 8 times x. And then I don't do anything with this second guy. He's good to go. All right. Now, in this case, I can go ahead and just combine like terms on the top, which is going to give me 17 all over 8x. Keep in mind, when you're adding fractions, adding and subtracting fractions, the denominator just stays the same. All right. So our answer here would be 17 over 8x. Now, you could check and see, too, if you could simplify this further, right? Like if you could do 17 divided by 8 or simplify that fraction or whatever. But in this case, they don't have any common factors, so you can't do anything with that. All right, next one. So we've got 9x and 2x, all right? So they both have an x, so we're good on that end. But we have to think, okay, what could I make out of a 9 and a 2? The least common multiple here is going to be 18. All right, so if I multiply this first guy by 2 over 2, I get 14 over 18x. And if I multiply the second fraction by 9 over 9, I get 9 over 18x. So now I've got my common denominator, which is what I need. Then I can just combine like terms on the top, and I get 23 over 18x. And that would be my answer. All right, next one here. We have to think, okay, what's going to be our least common denominator here? We've got a 3 and a 5. This one's not too bad. The least common multiple is going to be 15. So this first guy, I'm going to multiply by 5 over 5. I get 20x over 15 minus, and then this guy, I'm going to multiply by 3 over 3 so that I get that 15 in the bottom. I get a 24 there. So, of course, I know my denominator is going to be 15. And then I have to do subtraction on the top. However, I can't combine these, right? This guy's got an x. This guy's just a 24. So I'm going to end up with 20x minus 24. All right, next one. All right. So this one looks scary, but it's not bad. So this one actually, if we look, these guys already have a common denominator. Do you see that? So we don't have to multiply the top and the bottom of either fraction by anything because we've got a common denominator right off the bat. So we know that our denominator is going to be 4x minus 1. And then we're adding. So all we're doing is, since we've already got a common denominator, we just have to add the terms on the top. Now, in this case, we do have like terms, right? We've got a 6x and an x, which is going to give me a 7x. And we've got a -8 and a 3, which is going to give me a -5. All right? So that would be my answer there. Now, you might be tempted to go, oh, I could cancel these x's out. Do not do that. You can only do that when it's like an entire factor. Like this is a factor here, this is a factor here. You can't cancel out when you've got pluses and minuses, like right after the x's like that. So yeah, so that would be our answer there. All right, and same deal here. We've already got our common denominator. All right, our common denominator is 4x plus 9. Now in this case, it's subtraction. Now, what you have to make sure you do is this minus sign has to be distributed to everything on top here. Now, in this case, there's only one term on top. So really what we're going to end up with is negative 3x squared plus 4x squared all over our common denominator of 4x plus 9. Because what I had to do there was distribute. -1 times -4 is going to be positive 4x. Then in this case, we do have like terms on top, so we can combine those, and we get x squared all over 4x plus 9. All right, next one. All right, so this is where that distributing on top is really going to come into play, okay? So, again, whenever you have a minus sign, you have to make sure that you distribute it to everything behind the minus sign there in the numerator. So what we end up with is a -6x plus 3, and then we get -3x plus 1 because I distributed that. And again, we already had a common denominator here, right? 5x minus 2, 5x minus 2. Unfortunately, they're not going to stay this easy with the common denominator situation. But for today, we're riding the easy train here. I'll take it. All right, so then we go ahead and we got our common denominator. We've distributed our negative. We're just going to combine like terms. So we get -9x plus 4 all over 5x minus 2. All right, next one here. Let's take a look. So this first guy has a 6. This guy has a 6. So we're good to go with the numbers. Now we got to look at the variables here. So this guy has 1. The first guy has 1x. The second guy has 2 x's. They need to have the same number of x's, same number of factors, whatever it is. So all I got to do here is multiply the top and the bottom here by x. So I end up with 7x all over 6x squared plus 1 all over 6x squared. All right. Now I've got my common denominator. I can add the stuff on top. And that's my answer right there.